Victor Hugo's Les Miserables follows the main character, Fantine, through many life challenges. The book takes place in France in the early 19th century and focuses on three main sources of human injustice in society: poverty, a lack of rights and resources for women, and the loss of childhood caused by both physical and emotional hardships. Hugo emphasizes through this book that as long as these three concepts are present in society, society can always do better. Hugo conveys these themes to the reader by introducing characters that personally struggle with these issues. One character living in poverty, Jean Valjean, stole bread so that his sister and her 7 children would not starve, and he wound up in prison for 19 years. After he was let go, he had a very hard time finding a place to live and work, as he was constantly judged and mistreated by society because of his criminal past. He was able to become successful only after he destroyed his passport, which identified him as a convict, and he eventually became an extremely successful mayor. His character helps demonstrate the first theme in the way that society belittles people who are living in poverty and how society essentially forces the poor to stay poor. Fantine's main conflict stems from the mistreatment of women in society. Fantine was unable to find work because she had a child that was born out of wedlock, which was heavily frowned upon in society. She left her child, Cosette, with a family called the Thénardiers, who promised to care for her as long as Fantine sent them money. The Thénardiers became the main antagonists as they manipulated Fantine into giving them more and more money. Fantine lost her job after her employer found out the truth about her daughter, forcing Fantine to go to extreme measures to provide for Cosette by selling her hair and teeth and becoming a prostitute. While Cosette was living with the Thénardiers, she was neglected and forced to do work for them, while all the money her mother sent for her went to the Thénardiers' other children. This abuse ruined her childhood, showing the third theme of the book. These themes also apply to today's society. It is still hard for convicts to get jobs after they are released. Poverty drives people to crime, and receiving punishment for crime keeps people in poverty. The same vicious cycle that affected people in the novel affects people today. Children today are often made to feel they are unimportant to society despite many substantial contributions they have made, such as marches and walkouts against gun violence. Gun violence is also a good example of making children grow up before they should have to, as school shootings are such a big problem today in today's society, ending childhoods by physically and mentally scarring people. Women have less opportunities to succeed than men, as in our society, women are paid less than men are for the same job. As with Fantine, women are still treated unfairly in the workplace. Today, many women report being sexually harassed or talked to inappropriately at work. I relate most to Fantine and her issues, as I see the unfair treatment of girls at school. Sexist dress codes lead to underage girls being sexualized and pulled out of their classes in order to prioritize a boy's education over the girls, while perpetrating rape culture and victim blaming. Fantine gave money to Cosette when she was living in poverty herself. I can relate to wanting to put others before myself and trying to help others, although I have not been put in a situation such as Fantine was that forced me to do so. Through this book, I learned that we can still relate to the same problems discussed in an old book. This shows me that although we have made progress, there are still many issues that we must still solve. The happenings in the book saddened me as I saw the injustice in society that troubled the characters. Overall, I liked this book as it prompted me to think deeply, and it opened my eyes to the problems in our society. I was able to feel connected to the characters since many of their problems are the same problems we face today. As I read this book, I began to ask myself this question: how do we provide protection for our citizens while preventing criminal activity? A complex social issue in today's society is prostitution. As seen in Les Mis, these women are denied the resources and rights that all people deserve. The decriminalization of prostitution would help ensure the safety of women who are consensually sex workers. Recently, a bill called Allow States and Victims to Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act was passed by the House and the Senate. This bill suggests that by increasing the censorship of content on the internet, online sex trafficking will be stopped more effectively. However, this solution will not work. This bill will not reduce sex trafficking, instead it will force it to go underground and become even more dangerous. This censorship will also harm people who do sex work consensually, who share safety tips and advice online. To solve this societal problem, prostitution must be legalized. Sex work can sometimes be dangerous, leading to violence against women and rape. Prostitutes who are physically harmed by a client are often decide not to seek help in fear of being arrested. The decriminalization of prostitution will lead to less violence against women. When prostitution is legal, regulations can be placed on it that require the use of condoms and regular STD screenings, which greatly increase public health. Police resources would be saved if less time and money went into tracking down consensual sex workers. Another benefit of legalizing prostitution is that legal brothels could provide a significant amount of tax revenue that would go back to the state. Some people think that because prostitution is controversial, it should not be legal. However, BusinessInsider.com points out, we legalize and regulate a ton of commerce that's morally controversial, like gambling, alcohol, tobacco, lap dancing, and pornography. Not only does the decriminalization of prostitution benefit sex workers, it benefits the whole nation and the economy. Another societal issue that can be solved in a similar way is the use of illegal drugs. Vox.com says, in 2016, nearly 64,000 people died of drug overdoses in the U.S., a record high, and at least 2/3 of those deaths were linked to opioids, including heroin. Heroin users may be afraid to seek help when they or a friend overdose in fear of being arrested for using illegal drugs. To help reduce the amount of deaths caused by drug overdoses, some cities are implementing safe sites to use heroin. Trained staff can watch over the users and issue the opioid antidote in cases that the user overdoses. These sites improve public health by providing sterile equipment which reduces the transmission of diseases through shared needles. Some people believe that these sites will cause an increase in drug use in these areas, but this has been disproven since these sites can issue information about rehabilitation to users. This prevention technique has been shown to reduce criminal activity on the street and also improve public health. Both of these examples show that in order to prevent criminal activity and protect citizens at the same time, some criminal activity should be decriminalized with regulations put in place.